Morning, guys. I'd just like to do some background on like we often hear now like broken Britain and the West and the USA, the state it's in now. Now a lot of these things have been going on for years and years, and they all feed in. These are the dots what people talk about that you've got to join, and one of the particular arms is the theories, if you know what I mean. Um, and they're a gauge of how to control populations and how to um, see what you can get away with and see how good the media is at controlling everything, and a lot of them were kind of experiments, to see how far they can go, and because they were so successful in 1969, 70, and which was it was pretty much easier then for them to do it, if you know what I'm talking about. That was one of the first things I ever looked into, and I was in my teens. There was no internet then. No, we were still on their pay phones, where you put the 5, 10 pence in, 2 pence in the phone boxes. No mobile phones, nothing, So it was easy to do then, if you wanted to do a hoax. And there was one before that, wasn't there? It wasn't actually a hoax. It was more of a false flag, the JFK, which people never ever got to the bottom of it because they covered the tracks quite well, and it was hard. It was hard in them days, much harder to get all the footage together, and it's not. It's very difficult now for them, and I'll go through that. So that was that one. And then the 1969, 70, and then they got a bit like. They were so successful with that one. And the first book I ever got on this type of stuff, because I was only I was 7 at the time, 1969. 7, 8, 9, 10, probably the Apollo stuff, and I always thought then, hang on a minute, none of this stuff even looks right. You know what I mean? Because they had this fuzzy film, and then they had these crystal clear photographs, and they were supposed to have been taken with an ordinary film from a camera, which wouldn't work in those conditions, and the film in the camera as well, it wouldn't survive. Anyway, that's only one of the things. There's hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And there was a book called Dark Moon. Now you might be able to get that on Amazon, and maybe not Amazon. Dark Moon, and that was my introduction to the dark world of conspiracy, and it all feeds in. Actually, it all feeds in. It's one of the dots that feeds in, and all these things were done to gauge on how what they could get away with, and how the nations react, and that was the most successful one, I think. Yeah. And after that, they did one in 2000. Now that was a bit more. People were getting a bit more. Hang on a minute. People figured this one out quite quickly. Actually, it took a while, but they figured it out. And the main one on that one, you'd only have to look at one thing on that. In the year 2000, 2001, I think it was, and that is called Building 7. Just look it up, and you can still get stuff on that, Building 7. and a guy called Larry Silverstein who bought the buildings, and he was quite it was really transparent, really. He actually said about something about Building 7, but you'll have to look it up. I don't want to go into it here, but I'm just going through the kind of dots on the conspiracy trail, you know. And then he did a load of them in the mid 2000 teens, and then but that's when YouTube was getting better and better and better, and they virtually let in anything on to YouTube at first, anything, and then they were getting too exposed, and so they did a load of these what were then dubbed as psyops, and there was a ton of them. There was a load of them. There was a Pulse nightclub. There was the Boston Marathon. There was the later one was Las Vegas, which they had to pull all the footage from that one very quickly. There was a Berlin. Was it Berlin market? Christmas market, the Nice truck attack, which I took particular interest in. I'll just explain that in a minute. And then there was, I think, the last hurrah was they had the July 7th one in London, the bus, and I think that was actually a false flag. And some of the psyops, people actually do get hurt, you know. They're actually false flags. Stroke psyops, as in it's not the people do get hurt, but it's not the people that they tell you has done the deed. But it's actually an event, you know, where people do get it hurt, as was 2001, I think it was. You know, a lot of people got killed, and there's various thoughts on who did it, who was behind it. Maybe a few organisations working together. It probably wasn't the people that they said it was. But anyway, so yeah, the Nice truck attack, and people were getting good then because the cameras were everywhere, the phones were everywhere, and they were getting footage, and people would send them more footage, you know, that they capture on the scene and all that, and it was becoming kind of very, very difficult to do these psyops because there was too much footage, and it was getting broadcasted on YouTube. And the most clear one was the Boston Marathon by PK Truth. That was his best work ever. And he got hold of this footage, which was right above where there was supposed to be this bomb went off. And if you looked at it, it was like one of those explosions you see on car chases and that on the movies. And the flags just all fluttered in that. And it looked like a bit of a blast, but that's what it was. And anyway, there was this camera right above this place where they were doing all the staging of all these people getting like the carnage, and it was crystal clear footage, and there it all was, you know. They were throwing blood on people. And a lot of the people were kind of amputees already, and they were like crisis actors and stuff like that. And they identified them and tracked them down. And there was another guy who kind of he was supposed to be the big one who was pulling them all out, and he was another actor kind of fella. And a lot of them, then they started tracking them down. They go to all the different events, you know, like you'd see someone from the Pulse nightclub in Boston, and there was one guy. He was called the Mummy of Brussels. There's one in Brussels airport, which was another very poorly done one. a lot of them were poorly done. If you know what you're looking at, and the loop footage that they then do, what they do is they set cameras up, bit of a safe distance away from these things, and then they surround the area in all these flashing lights. And a lot of them are real police, and they're told to stand down because they were told they were drills sometimes and stuff like that, and beforehand. And then they kind of took a few of them live, and the Boston Marathon, that was one of the most clear ones. On the Pulse nightclub, the footage of that was actually pathetic, and the second one, the aftermath was even worse. They had this set up hospital, and these set up doctors who weren't even doctors or anything like that, and they were ferrying them to this hospital. It wasn't there, and there was none of them were in this hospital. And if you looked at who all the victims were, and it actually said where they lived, and they all lived hundreds of miles away, and they were supposed to be like just on a night out in this club in there, and they were all from hundreds of miles. There was hardly anybody. I don't think there was anyone that was like local. And that's who usually goes to the nightclub, isn't it? People who live in the area. But and some of them were identified as these crisis actors, and they were also followed and tracked down afterwards, and there was nothing wrong with them. Supposed to be shot up by all these AK-47s, but anyway. And the Boston Marathon, that was another one. And all the ambulances were told to stand down. They were all queued up, and outside the area, they'd lock down the areas. That's what they do, and then all these people turn up or are already there in all these kind of uniforms that nobody recognises, and they're supposed to, and a lot of them are like black SWAT team uniforms, and they're all crisis actors. If you watch the one on the Berlin, it was Berlin. There was a shopping centre in Berlin, and that was some of the most obvious footage ever of these people turning up, these so-called police units, and what they do is they get the local police and ambulances to stand down, keep out the way, and make this ring around the operations. And the one I looked at was the Nice truck attack, and after that I didn't bother anymore because I thought, like, well, it's a waste of time. Yet they're like, it's called harvesting your energy, right? So I looked at the Nice truck attack, and there was this footage of these what happened, and a lot of it was CGI, and then they had the crisis actors on after that as well. These people that was flown in, Americans. They probably used to add some victims there. Now they had a big list of victims on that one. And there was some footage of all these mannequins in the road, and I thought, like, at the time, what's all this garbage? You know what I mean? This is got to be a joke. Anyway, they somehow managed to get through it, and get rid of it bit by bit. It took them a while to get rid of that footage, but nobody was really looking at it, because the general population don't look at these things. They only see the headlines, all the flashing lights, and that's it. And the loop footage on the media. That's how they used to do it. But like with the YouTube, it was becoming almost impossible for them to do it because the footage was everywhere and there was cameras everywhere. So they out-surveilled themselves in the end. And that's what all the police do now with all this auditing stuff and that. Some of it's quite amusing, but they over-surveilled. They made a few errors on the way. Now, with all the psyops, so what I did with the Nice truck attack, just to go back to that, is I looked into the funerals I said, well, all the victims are going to have funerals, because they did say where they were from, right? So I just Googled, the local newspapers, right, and some of the local footage. What you got, the local television stations around France. They were from everywhere, all over the place, and a lot of them, I got into about 10 of them, and a lot of them, they were from where they said they were, but they didn't live there anymore, right? And what they had was, they didn't have funerals. They had services for them, vigils kind of thing, in the town where they're from. But they couldn't sort of like, and then if you found out where they moved to, there was nothing going on there. It was just where they were from. And they had like their old family home or whatever, where they used to live. And they give you footage and photographs of that, But they weren't funerals. I think there was only one guy who that night, he really did get killed, and he was a policeman. What was his name? Grout or something like that. And I think he actually did get killed, and he did have a I think he got in the way somewhere where he wasn't supposed to, or he didn't know about it. A lot of the police, they don't know till it happens, and then they're told to stand down. When they get all the emergency calls, they're told, don't go in there, it's all under control. And I think he was caught in the middle of it, I don't know. Anyway, I think he died. Grout, Grout. And I remember the name because I did study this quite a lot. And there was another bloke who was exposed there, and he was one of the Johnny on the spot cameramen, the news people, and he was a German, and then he was the first on the scene at Berlin a couple of weeks later, But and they didn't know why he was in Nice. And he had his camera running at this truck, and there's a lot of that kind of thing going on where people were in right there, and the other one I think it was Berlin. And the guy ran out of McDonald's and he was shooting people. But the guy was waiting outside with the caravan, with the camera. How would he know? He was across the road. And the footage was all edited, So it was getting too difficult for them. And that was some of the worst kind of all these secret police footage in that. So, but what they never really got behind, what the bottom of is who was the very top orchestrating all this. They had some of the secret services who were obviously involved in it. And someone was supplying all the crisis actors in that, and they were made. A lot of them were put down as drills to in the first place, and then they kind of went live, and then if they were successful, then they go with it, And but when you know what to start looking for, there was all the same stuff, and there was like. They used to do shots, and it wasn't even where the action was. Around about the area, they put shoes and children's teddy bears and stuff, and they always used to put loads of buggies, like kiddies' buggies everywhere, and that was like all they put them all along the Nice promenade, miles away from where it was all supposed to be happening, and that was one of the things that people were looking at all this stuff, and then they had a pickup that went round, and picked up all the buggies and shoes, and it was caught on camera. Everything was getting caught on camera, and there was cameras everywhere, and they never worked. And it's still the case now, isn't it? They never work at the time. Like the ship has just gone into the into the bridge in Baltimore, like, and nothing worked on the ship just at that time, and then it came back on. And people just get they just they don't even know. Yeah, but that one, the Nice truck attack, and then after that, you get like a sort of fatigue, and you think, well, and this feeds in. This is one of the dots, and it's all to do with how far they can go, what psyops they can do, how they can control all the media and everything, how well they can do it. And that all came into like 2020. They were the dry, all that was, kind of dry runs and experiments, if you like, and you think a lot of it was kind of mockery. They reckon a lot of it's just mocking the population, and it's probably part of it, and all the predictive programming. It's all true. It's all true, and and once you see it, you can't unsee it, And if you're wired up differently in the first place, you could see it all along. Anyway, which are kind of, I'm probably in that category, because I've always kind of sort of saw all these things like Building 7 and, the expeditions to other places and stuff like that. But then you've got to decide if you are wired up to it. If you like PK Truth, like the one thing that he didn't do is realise what was going to happen if you become these truthers, and it's all very well, but you're exposing yourself, and you're putting a big target on your back sometimes, and that's what happened to them all. They all got rug pulled, they all got taken down because they had to, because they were like, it was plain as day, a lot of the stuff. And you can't find a lot of it now. You can, if you dig deep enough and you know where to look, you can probably find it. But I don't even bother now, because you get to know. And then the other thing is what you do with it. Now, in normal everyday life, there's not much you can do with it except you can know what it's about, and you can recognise these things when they happen. But apart from that, like a lot of it's quite not really useful to you, apart from knowing, and especially things that have happened in the distant past. It doesn't really. A lot of it doesn't matter, and so you've got to do that and not get twisted up and bent out of shape. Just I treat it as like a hobby in the end, and I still do, really. But one thing it really, really did do is help in 2020. It really did, because there was all the hallmarks there, early doors of all this footage what you get, and the loop footage. There was a load from Milan, and then they used to go to all these other places, and ICU units, and you could tell they weren't even real ones, So it really did help then, and you could recognise kind of the whole lot pretty quickly. It took me about 2-3 weeks, but straight away I knew, hang on a minute, I've got to look at this, and it was a good one, like worldwide, wasn't it? But it was pretty well done, this one, because there was nothing to see. There was nothing to film, was it? Except some trucks and just outside hospitals and stuff like that. But it was all like the loop footage. It was a hallmark of the psyops, and it really did help to know the things that you should be looking for. Anyway, So it all feeds in. So I'll go on further then of the other dots that later on. Cheers.